It was a cool Los Angeles evening, and the studio lights of AGT burned bright like they always do, catching the shimmer of the stage floor as the audience buzzed with chatter. The boy's name was Eli, 14 years old, small for his age, but with eyes that carried the kind of calm you only see in people who've already lived through something. He clutched his guitar as he waited behind the curtain. The producers whispered cues, the crowd cheered for the last act, and suddenly, it was his turn. He took one deep breath. In that breath lived his entire journey, from a small coastal town in the Philippines where he sang to the sound of waves and jeepneys, to the flight that took him here, the longest he'd ever been away from home. His mother's words echoed in his mind. Sing like you're talking to God. The stage doors opened. He stepped out. The crowd fell quiet. Maybe it was the way his oversized denim jacket looked, or the tiny tremor in his hands. He gave a shy wave. "Hi," he said softly, his accent clear and melodic. Sofia Vergara leaned forward with a smile. "Hi, what's your name?" "My name is Eli," he replied. "I'm from the Philippines." A ripple of applause swept through the room. Heidi clapped. "Welcome, Eli. How old are you?" 14. Simon Cowell tilted his head, studying the boy. 14, and you flew all the way from the Philippines to audition here?" Eli nodded, his smile small but sure. "Yes, sir. I've always wanted to sing for you." The crowd, awed, and even Simon cracked a small grin. "All right then," Simon said, leaning back. "What are you going to sing?" Eli adjusted the strap of his guitar. "Hotel California." That got a murmur. The Eagles' classic. One of the hardest songs to pull off vocally, especially for someone so young. Simon's eyebrows rose, perhaps with doubt, perhaps with intrigue. "Okay," Simon said, "whenever you're ready." Eli took another breath. The first chords rang out, clean, delicate, with that unmistakable intro everyone knows. But it wasn't a copy. It was slower, rawer, as if each note had been carved out of memory. His fingers moved with precision learned not in music school, but from hours on a borrowed guitar back home. Then he began to sing. "On a dark desert highway." The first line carried across the hall, gentle but steady. Something about his tone, warm and husky, yet fragile, made people look up from their phones. The audience grew silent. His voice filled the entire theater, carrying a kind of emotion that didn't just come from talent, it came from truth. By the time he reached, warm smell of colitas, rising up through the air, Sophia's hand was on her heart. Terry Crews, watching from backstage, whispered, "Wow." But the magic truly hit during the chorus. Eli's voice climbed higher than anyone expected, soaring but never breaking, gliding over the crowd like wind over an open sea. Each note hung in the air. Simon leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on him. Eli's body swayed with the rhythm. He wasn't performing to impress anymore. He was just lost in the song, the way he'd sung it back home at sunset when no one was watching. He reached the guitar solo, fingers flying across the strings. The camera panned over the judges' faces, pure astonishment. The crowd started to cheer mid-song, clapping in rhythm, but Eli just kept going, eyes closed, completely in his own world. Then came the final verse. "Last thing I remember, I was running for the door." You could hear his heartbeat in his phrasing, the small catch in his breath, the way his voice cracked just slightly on the last, "Anytime you like, but you can never leave." The last chord rang. Silence. For one heartbeat, no one moved. Then the theater exploded. The audience was on their feet, screaming, cheering. Sophia stood, hands up, shouting, "Bravo." Howie Mandel shook his head in disbelief. Heidi pressed her hands together, eyes glistening. Simon didn't move. He just stared at the boy. Eli blinked, unsure of what to do. He looked small again, almost scared. Then Simon stood, slowly. He said nothing, just walked toward the golden buzzer. The audience saw what was happening and screamed louder, a rolling wave of sound that hit Eli like thunder. Simon's hand hovered over the button. He looked back at Eli. "That," he said, his voice cutting through the roar, "was perfection." And he hit it. The golden buzzer burst, confetti raining from above, gold swirling like sunlight around the boy. Eli's eyes widened, tears spilling down his cheeks. His hands flew to his mouth as the music swelled, the iconic AGT theme, but even louder were the cheers. Simon walked up on stage, smiling wide now. "You've got something very, very special," he said. "You just reminded everyone why we do this show." Eli tried to speak but only managed, "Thank you," voice shaking. His mother rushed from backstage, wrapping him in a hug as gold flecks stuck to their hair. The cameras caught it, the image that would go viral within hours. A boy from the Philippines, eyes closed in disbelief, under a storm of gold. The rest of the night blurred. Producers congratulated him, the judges hugged him, Simon promised mentorship. But when the lights finally dimmed and the audience left, Eli sat alone on a quiet backstage step, guitar across his knees, still trembling from everything. Terry Crews came by, crouched beside him, and said softly, "You know, kid, you just changed your life." Eli looked up, smiling through tears. "I just wanted to sing." And that was the truth of it. The story didn't end there. In the days that followed, his audition clip exploded online, millions of views, thousands of comments. Filipinos around the world shared it with pride. Strangers wrote that his voice healed something in them, and music legends called to offer him songs. Back home, his small town watched the video on a projector set up by the barangay hall. His neighbors clapped every time Simon hit the buzzer, even though they'd seen it a dozen times. His mother's friends cried. His old guitar teacher stood silently, hand over his heart. Months later, during the live shows, Eli stepped back onto the AGT stage a different person, not because of fame, but because he finally believed he belonged there. He still wore the same denim jacket, still held the same guitar, but his voice carried a quiet confidence now. Simon greeted him backstage before the show, patting his shoulder. "Just do what you did the first time," he said. "Sing from your heart." And he did. Each performance after that, whether it was a soft ballad or a Filipino classic, was another chapter in the same story, a kid who didn't chase the spotlight but let it find him. After AGT, doors opened everywhere. He recorded covers, performed for charity concerts, and flew home to a hero's welcome. When he returned to his old school, the principal had arranged a small stage in the courtyard. Hundreds of kids waited, holding handmade signs. He sang, "Hotel California," again, not for judges or cameras this time, but for friends and teachers who'd believed in him from the start. When the song ended, he smiled and said, "Dreams don't have a price. You just keep singing until the world listens." The crowd erupted, and somewhere far away, Simon Cowell probably smiled seeing the video trending again. And that's the story we'll remember. Not just a golden buzzer, not just a viral clip, but a voice that carried across oceans and touched hearts everywhere. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button, share it with someone who needs a bit of inspiration today, and subscribe for more stories like this. Because sometimes, one voice really can change everything.